Hi and welcome to the video blog for my first game in a week. Before I get started, I'd like to quickly discuss why I've decided to do game in a week and what it is. In my professional life and in my hobby projects, I try and use best practices, and agile development is currently highly regarded as a good way to develop software. Breaking down the project into increasingly simple stories, assigning those stories to sprints, completing the sprint, having a retrospective to decide what went well, what didn't, and using that learned information to better plan the following sprints. And even though I tried to do all of this, I still wasn't getting the results I hoped for. In my previous project, which was the post-apocalyptic zombie shooter, 6 months into the game, or 6 months into development, I still didn't even have a playable version of the game. People would ask me what I was working on, I'd tell them, I'd be able to show them a tech demo of walking around this 4 square kilometer city with collision detection and physics, but there was no gameplay. 6 months in, and I still didn't even know if the game I was making was going to be fun. So I've decided that that is a ridiculous way to develop software, especially for one person doing it in their spare time, where the amount of time you have is really at a premium. So that's where Game in a Week comes in. Game in a Week demands that if I have a game idea, I must have a playable demo in a week or less. That demo can be really rough. It can have placeholder graphics, no textures. If it's a racing game, you can race cubes around a cube city. Who cares? The game dynamic will be there. I'll be able to play around, see if it's fun, and it will enable me to fail early. So that's pretty much it. Rather than spending 6 months and still not knowing if the game is fun, I should know within a week if the game dynamic I'm trying to develop is good, and if it warrants the effort and time to actually bring it to completion. So the first game I'm going to make in a game in a week is called Schwizzle. It's a bit of a mouthful, and it was inspired by this picture here. I love design. I wanted to be an architect when I was younger, so when I use StumbleUpon, design is one of the key subjects that I receive random pages on, be it software design, GUI design, architectural design, or in this case it seems to be interior design. And when I saw this photo, the design on the wall captured my imagination, and I saw a game in it. The game would be a puzzle, Rubik's Cube, jigsaw type of game. Each of these circles is interconnected with its neighbors to the north, south, east and west, unless it's an edge piece, in which case it has no neighbor in that direction. And if this circle here was rotated, not only it would be modified, but its neighbors would be modified, because these overlapping sections would move. This section, if it was rotated 90 degrees anti-clockwise, this deep red maroon section would end up down here. This section would end up to the east, and this eastern section would end up to the north. So the concept is that at the start of the game, the board has a certain design and it's solved. It randomly jumbles itself, and then it's up to the user to solve the jumble and bring the board back to its original design. So this is day 1 of Game in a Week. Today I plan on procedurally generating the pieces required, the circles with the interconnection pieces, so it can all move independently. I only have 2 or 3 hours a day to work on this because it is part-time. So yeah, if I get the procedural pieces done today, I'll be pretty happy. I'll report back in an hour or two and show what I've done. So here I am again. It's about 2.5 hours later, and I have procedurally generated my first game pieces. This piece here that you can see on screen is what I call a twister, and this is the component that the user will interact with by touching and twisting clockwise or anti-clockwise. So if we sort of cross-reference this with the image that has inspired this game, this piece here would be the circle minus the overlapping parts. So this section here, and so this section here and here, if this part also had an overlap. If I quickly, I've also procedurally generated the overlap. So you can see here that there's elliptical pieces that fit snugly into the twister. The twister is based on a torus, and then these pieces are generated by calculating the intersection points between this circle and a neighboring circle which has a specific amount of overlap. When I'm generating the twister, I only generate a 45-degree section, and then I transform it, sort of rotate to generate the full part. And similarly, when generating this, what I call a gem, so there's the twister and the gem, I proceed to generate a quarter of it, and then flip, and I end up with one piece. I flip it in software so that I have, this is one vertex buffer, and these are, well, this is one vertex buffer that's transformed around the screen to create multiple gems. So that's it for today. Tomorrow I will build the game board, so enable multiple twisters and gems, as well as try and add some basic user interaction where they can click on the screen and drag the twister in order to rotate. Hi, and welcome back to day 2 of Game of the Week for Schwizzle. Today I added procedural generation of different board sizes. So there's a 3x3 board. I can add a 3x1 board. Even a, let's go something crazy, 15x1 board. And it'll automatically generate the correct amount of twisters and gems. Let's go back to a more reasonable size so we can get a better view. I've also added the correct coloring of the gems. So if a gem only has, well, if a gem in its original position only has one parent twister, the gem will be entirely colored as that twister is. So we can see here these 3 red gems, these 2 orange, and these 3 purple. They only belong to one of the twisters, so they have the full color. And the shared gems are multicolored. They have half color of one of its parent twisters and half color of the other. A gem can only sit between 1 or 2 twisters. You can never have 3 or 4 parents. So this will allow the user to know exactly where this gem fits in the board when it becomes jumbled. So that's pretty much it for today. Didn't have a great deal of time. Tomorrow, input. I need to be able to click on one of the twisters, rotate it, and also have its gems rotate with it, and then they can sort of share or change who their current parents are and move throughout the board. Here we are again for day 3 of Game of the Week for Schwizzle. I'm sorry that these are very quick. I'm not going into any details. I'm pretty much just showing micro insight into the progress I'm making, but this is Game of the Week. It's supposed to be fast. If you have any questions on how I'm doing stuff, by all means comment, or go to my website, which will be in the description below, and send me an email. Today I've been working on input. So what I've done is when each of the procedural board pieces is generated and placed into the world space, they're all 3D, because when I finish the game, or if I finish the game, I want to be able to add some nice shading and lighting effects, some transparency, make them actually into crystalline gem structures. So when they're placed into the world and the camera is procedurally positioned so that it can see everything in the world, I project from world space into screen space. So then when I move the mouse around the screen, each twister and each gem knows where it sits in screen space, and I can select a specific one and apply a rotation to it. So each time the mouse moves, I calculate what's the difference in rotation between where I was last time and where I was this time based on the center of the current selected twister, and using that I can rotate the twister the correct amount and move it around. So there you go. This is a huge step forward in the dynamic of the game. If we look at it in wireframe, you can see really elegantly how it works. So if I rotate this northeastern piece, we can see that it picks up its 4 neighboring gems and rotates them. And then when I click on this southeastern piece, it does the same thing. So you can move the gems between the parents and jumble up the board, which will be all automatic, but here we are doing it manually. And now that it's jumbled, let's try and solve it. I've been playing around with this for a few hours. It's a lot later than I ever expected to work on it, because when I got it working I was actually pretty intrigued with how it worked. Look, it is a pretty high entry curve to the game. I don't think it would appeal to a lot of people. But look, this is the whole point. Fail early, right? So, oh no, not that piece. Let's push that piece in here. And there you go. The board is solved. There's no win case yet. It doesn't know that it's solved, but that's the idea of the game. We can also, as yesterday, create bigger board pieces, which can be manipulated in the exact same way. So if these are jumbled randomly at the start of each level, I think this level would be pretty difficult to solve. But you know, I'll play test it over the next day or two, and we'll see how it works out. Yeah, I'll let you know. Hi, welcome to day 4. Is it 4 of Game in a Week? I didn't do a great deal of work on the game today. The one thing I added was procedural jumbling of the board. So there you go, that jumbled 1,000 times really quickly. One single jumble is rotating one single twister by 90 degrees. And the rest of my time was spent playing the game, getting a better feel of how it works, trying to understand introductory cases or sort of start levels as opposed to more advanced levels. You know, the simplest level the game supports is a 2x1 board. So usually it's pretty trivial to solve. So you can get a bit more difficult then with a 3x1. Yep. Right, how do I... So this is already a bit of a challenge. It's got to be possible to flip these two pieces. Probably, as with a Rubik's Cube, there's probably a set number of moves you can do in order to modify a board, but you know, I've only been playing this a couple of hours in total, so I haven't really figured it out yet. Let's just try and randomly jumble it a little bit and get it back into... Yes, okay. So sometimes, yeah, I've found that a good way when you're stuck is to sort of take a couple of steps back and then approach it again, and you'll you'll generally fix it. But trying to modify it in place isn't something I've yet figured out how to do. And then, we can continually expand the difficulty to add extra challenge to users as they play the game. So now here we are again at a 2x2. So let's quickly try and solve this one. Input needs to be tweaked a little bit. When you let go of a piece, it automatically goes to the closest, because they can only sit finally at a 90, 180, 270, 360. So when you let go, it'll click into the closest one. So maybe I should have it rotate over a number of milliseconds so that it moves there smoothly, because sometimes it can be a bit sort of confusing when you let go and suddenly it bounces to somewhere else. But anyway, that's a minor issue that I shouldn't be wasting my time on in Game in a Week. Okay, so here we are again at a very similar impasse that we were at the last time, so let's just tweak it around a bit. Let's move that one there, that one there. Okay. So this is probably a horrendous technique, but it's what's been working for me in the short term. Nah, well look, I won't waste the video too long. But, as I said, the board can get progressively bigger and bigger and bigger. And, I love the dynamic. I think it's really interesting and that. But what I've found to my disappointment is that as the board gets bigger, it doesn't particularly get harder. The exact same techniques are used. It just takes that a little bit longer. So, moving pieces up. The problem, it is a problem in the game. Something taking longer isn't more fun. It should be that little bit more challenging. Put a time constraint on it. The time constraints would want to be pretty broad to allow people of different levels. Someone just starting out, once they understood the core concepts, could solve this board. It would just take them, longer. Someone who's really good at the game could solve the board. It would take them less time than the beginner, but it would still just take them more time than one of the simpler boards. And that's a fundamental design issue. The game should continue to challenge the player, not just absorb more of their time, especially on mobile devices where people don't want to be spending 20 minutes solving a level in order to have any challenge whatsoever. And so I've been thinking about it today for a couple of hours, and fundamentally I think this game design is flawed. But look, that's, as I mentioned yesterday when I started to see some cracks in design, that's the whole purpose of Game in a Week. I could have spent a month or two working on really slick graphics, have everything sparkling and beautiful, have a backstory, animations, and after all that time I could sort of realize, this game isn't really working for me. By that stage you're pretty heavily invested and might release it anyway, just because you need to get some return on your time and financial investment. But Game in a Week, 3 days in, I started to see it. 4 days in of part-time development, I'm now relatively confident that the game as I originally saw it isn't working. I need to reconsider certain gameplay design aspects. I already have a couple of ideas, so maybe there will be Schwizzle version 2 Game in a Week that follows this one. But for now, even though I've come to that initial conclusion, I'm going to finish this element of Game in a Week so I can push the demo up to test flight and get some third-party feedback. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Tomorrow what I'm going to do is I'm going to add textures to these pieces so it becomes more like solving a jigsaw or one of those puzzles where each part of the jigsaw is on a square and you have one free space and you slide stuff around to put the image back together. So yeah, that would be my my goal. And then on the last day, I'm just going to try and implement some different board types. I don't think this solid board type is the only one you can have. A cross would be a valid board type. I think sort of a snake, across, down, across, down, across. A hollow one, maybe a board type that has a wall there in the middle on the top two and a wall on the bottom two, so you only have one piece that interconnects both sides. There's a lot of different types of boards you can implement that will vary up the game a bit. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do and see how it goes. Welcome to day 5 of Schwizzle Game in a Week. Today I added texturing. So as I said at the end of the video yesterday that I was going to make it into more of a jigsaw sort of puzzle. I'm only jumbling it a couple of times at the moment because I'm still sort of learning how to do this. And look, initial feel about it is it's extremely difficult. Whereas in the color one, edge twisters have 2 gems that are solid colors and they can interchangeable. It doesn't matter once the colors are right. Whereas this, everything must be in the exact perfect location, and that extra requirement really increases the difficulty. This one looks like it will be okay to solve. Yeah, there you go. Sometimes I can't solve the 2x1, I just get into a pickle and can't get past it. If we try 3x1, it's going to be that bit harder again. So let's move that out. A lot of the same concepts I used, but it definitely has an extra level of difficulty. Because as well, in the colored mode, it doesn't matter what orientation the twister is in, it's just a color. Whereas here, again, not only do the gems have to be in their exact location, but the twister has to be returned to its location, because, if that's flat colored, you don't know, but because it's textured, you know exactly, and it really adds to the complexity. So we can see here that this piece is right, but the twister is in the wrong way. That twister should sit like that. So let's try and put this one together right. I guess I need this piece in there. What goes up there? This piece. The chances of me solving this, I think, are pretty slim. But look, again, I don't want to waste time by just you guys watching me. But like as it gets more and more difficult, you can, well, not more and more difficult, but as the board gets larger and larger, the difficulty starts to grow. Really, really quickly. I can always get it pretty close because I know the obvious techniques, but it's always those last couple of steps that really trick me. There, it's another dynamic of the game, more challenging than I'd hoped. I thought this might be a nice bonus level of the game, that every couple of levels of solving the normal one you get this jigsaw level. And what I was going to do was I was going to have, as part of the story of the game, I was going to then do some basic sort of story animations and use a frame buffer. So I rendered a frame buffer and then use that texture to render to this. So not only would it be an image, but it would be a animated image. And look, I still might try it out for curiosity, but I do think that how difficult it is with a static image, if the image is moving, it would be even more difficult. So that's it for today. It's pretty cool to have done, but I'm uncertain about its usability. Some people may love it. I'd like to hear your feedback. If you're a puzzle nut and you think that trying to solve this and get everything back in place would be fun, let me know. I can add you to my TestFlight account and give you I can give you the Mac version, or it's also built for iOS, OS X, Windows, Linux, Raspberry Pi, and Android. So tomorrow I'm going to build the other board types, just give it a shot and see how it feels. I'll see you then. Welcome to day 6 of Schwizzle Game in a Week. Today was just sort of playing around with different board types. The first I implemented was called Cross. As the name suggests, it just makes a board that is in the shape of a cross rather than a full grid. There's nothing much different to solving it. I guess it does give up slightly different challenges, because this centerpiece can be a bit difficult. But let's quickly try and get there and see how it goes. Okay, so yeah, here we are at the ever-persistent issue that I really should try and write a solver for, but getting those two pieces solved, which again, that already took too long of you just watching the video, and I don't know how to do it yet. And look, the only other board I added was just an extension of this. It's called Crossbox, and yeah, it creates a cross inside a box, so you have these empty pieces here that, nothing there. And it's pretty much just the same thing. Just continue to solve it as it is. So look, that's it for Game in a Week for Schwizzle. I'd really love to hear your feedback, what you think of the game purely as from what I've described, or if you're interested in giving it a go, let me know and I'll try and get you a build. I still think it's a good concept. I think it has legs. It just needs to be tweaked to move away from being a purely puzzle game to being something a little bit more arcade. As I said, I have a couple ideas, so hopefully soon I'll get back with Game in a Week number 2 and refine the idea and have a fun, challenging game experience at the end. Thanks for watching.